So I just watched the Evangelion Rebuild films, so 1 through 3. I was very curious to see what my thoughts would be uh, after watching the show. I wondered if I was gonna like it as much as they did the first time, or my opinion would just completely change. So let's just start with Rebuild 1 and work our way up. So Rebuild 1 is kind of like a retelling or a remix of the first half of the show, or the first quarter of it. And I can see why a lot of people, like every time I talk to someone about the rebuilds, they kind of thought it was just like like an abridged version, an abridged adaptation of the show. So they just assumed it was gonna follow the same kind of trail. But when I watched it, after watching the show, I kind of feel like people should have kind of assumed that the rebuild films were going to be something completely different from the show, because there's a lot of subtle differences in one that were just off. And I think these were just little markings. And I think that with these rebuild films, I noticed in the rebuild films that slowly these differences were gonna ramp up. Like one, it's like little nudges, little different. It's like you see a thing that's like light blue, and then it's like, oh, let's redo it, but we're gonna make the light blue just a little bit darker, and like it's different, but you just can't put your finger on it. So like one just feels like it's a little like little nudges, little subtle like little pushes. It's like, oh yeah, this isn't like the show. Like, it starts off like not starts off, but like in the show, like after the first Ava fight, I think it's after the first Angel fight. Shinji is just like cocky. He's like, yo, whatever. He kind of just is very dismissive, and then when Misato talks to him about it, she kind of forces him to come along, and I think in the show she takes him to see like the city. It's like, look, these are the people you have to protect or whatever. I'm not completely sure. Like the show is already escaping my memory, but the one thing I do know for sure is that Misato is not supposed to know about the central dogma so early in the show. Here, she just takes Shinji straight to the dogma, straight to see Lilith, which was Adam in the show. And here, I think it's kind of like the first sign that, yeah, we're not going to follow the TV series. This is something different. And I think, like, both on a meta level, like, they wanted a movie that would get people who never seen the show to watch it, because I think a lot of people went in saying, "Oh, you should watch the TV series before watching the rebuild," which I don't agree with, because the rebuild films feel like that they can stand on their own. They're very self-contained to a degree. To someone who has never seen the show or End of Ava, I think the rebuild films can stand on their own very well. It's only that if you watch the show and End of Ava, you might have more of a different perspective on it, and that's kind of what I experienced when I watched 1.1 first. When I saw 1, I was like, "This is different. Oh, this is so different. What is?" And I was like trying to like understand the differences, because these were like kind of like getting to me. At first, I was like getting mad about these changes, but when I got to 2 and 3, which I'll get into a little bit later, I started to understand like, well, this is the point. And then I started thinking about End of Ava, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe this kind of makes sense. And I even started watching other YouTube videos about this to kind of get more context with the rebuild films and NGE. And I started to understand a little bit better, and I actually got more and more in love with the rebuild films. I started liking them a lot more as I was kind of watching more of them. And 1 overall is a solid movie. Like, it has a good like pacing to it. There's not a lot in there that's gonna throw new viewers off. It's not like, oh, I don't know what the fuck's going on. You'll get a beat, at least for the story. But for those who watched NGE and End of Ava, it's like, whoa, this like, and your mind starts racing. You start thinking to yourself like, oh, what if this is like a new reality or something? Like maybe like after the End of Ava, everything's restarting and it's rebuilding, and each time there might be something slightly different each attempt. And you have like more of these context clues within Rebuild 1. That's very subtle. Like, it's not very like direct or obvious, but they say there's like some lines, some scenes that play out differently. And some people were saying like with Shinji, for example, like he is such a different character in the Rebuild films. Like in the series, he was just kind of like a little bitch almost. He was just like, oh, I don't want to go in the Ava. I want to go home. I want to leave. I'm doing whatever. But in the Rebuild films, like he's still kind of like that, but at the same time he's a little bit more cocky the more he does it. Like he's it's like he starts to warm up to being an Ava pilot to a degree, to a point. While in the show, like I don't ever think he felt comfortable being an Ava pilot from start to finish. Like he just kind of is there just to be there. Like he never really, wanted to pilot it. The Rebuild films kind of mess with that a little bit. Yeah, they still portray Shinji as a guy who doesn't want to pilot an Ava, but I feel like to a point he kind of wants to, and then, in 2 he kind of doesn't want to anymore, just to end up that he kind of wants to be an Ava pilot. We'll get into that when we talk about 2, I guess. I'm getting ahead of myself. But 1 is just such a solid movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. I enjoyed the pacing, I enjoyed how it was structured, because it felt like a complete movie. It didn't feel like, oh man, I have to wait for number 2. Oh, this is such a long wait, or whatever. It didn't feel like nonsense by the end. Like it felt like that. At least it felt somewhat conclusive for that film. Like that there's enough to make more, but you can watch it and then like if you liked it, hey, you can wait for the second one. If you didn't like it, you're not gonna sit there and be like, I have to watch 2 now because there's not a lot. Whatever. You get like a good solid movie out of that. While being different, like I think that's so. Like as I said, like on a meta layer to the film, it's basic to the point where everyone can kind of go in and watch it cold. But I think it's also like it's on a story level that's very like subtle to like newcomers. But for people who watch the show and End of Ava, it's like, whoa, this is like something that's contributing to the story. It's not a direct sequel. It's not like an obvious sequel where it's like referencing the old movie or the old show or anything, but it's a sequel in the sense that this is like a universe that takes place after this show. Like this is like a reconstruction after End of Ava. Like End of Ava, just everything just kind of spoilers for End of Ava, by the way. I just said that before, but whatever. But yeah, at the end of Ava, everything gets destroyed. Everything just kind of comes like tumbling down, obviously. So that kind of happens, and it feels like with Rebuild 1, it's just like, Shinji and Asuka to a point, or just Shinji, or whatever, is rebuilding this new reality, and things are slightly different that plays out. And I was just kind of wondering, and I need to rewatch the first episode of the show, but in Rebuild 1, it shows that Shinji doesn't go back home, or was it 2? I think it was 1. But he doesn't go home, and he sleeps like in a cardboard box or whatever the fuck. And I'm just wondering, like in the show, I don't think he ever did that. I think he just kind of stuck with Misato, for whatever. But I think in Rebuild 1, like Shinji sleeps in a box. But I think Shinji from the show that might influence this reconstruction kind of doesn't like himself, and he wants to rebuild himself to a point. And I think him being living in a cardboard box is kind of like a symbolic, like kind of, yeah, he's a piece of shit. Fuck him. Put him in a box. I mean, that's a stretch. I will admit that's kind of a stretch to say, whatever. But I mean, that's like also like a very minor thing that doesn't really go anywhere either. It just kind of is there. Then he goes back to Misato's place. But I like that you had more of these scenes. The only thing with Rebuild 1 and with Rebuild films in general, up until 3, I think, a lot of the scene compositions felt generic. Like in the show when I was watching it was like gorgeous scenes that just seem so purposeful and intentional. Like it just feels like very like a lot of time and effort was put into setting up a scene in a certain way. In Rebuild 1, a lot of the scenes just kind of felt like, oh, we have to have a nice little structured scene. We can have like a little bike rack here, this, and it feels less artistic and just kind of feels generic. I don't know necessarily like it's not bad. I'm not gonna say like, oh, the way that I feel about these scenes are bad, but it just doesn't have that magic to the show. And that's the other thing I was noticing when I was watching Rebuild 1. I think I was going in through a more cynical, negative mindset, which I kind of hated. Like, after I watched the movie, I started thinking about that movie, and I was like, yeah, I was being a fucking asshole about this. Even with Rebuild 2, I think I was being a little needlessly harsh to it. I kind of talked about that in the stream I did about Ava, and I think I was just being overly negative. But I'll get into that when I talk about 2. I keep jumping ahead. But with 1, I just feel like I was being a little petty with it. But, now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of like the ideas that was in it. I love that Masato, like, takes Shinji to the Dogma to see Lilith. And I like that idea more and more that I think about it, with Lilith and being in that little, like, Dogma, then Adam being on the moon. And I was also watching, I'm going to put the link to this video in the description below, but I've been talking about this video everywhere almost, but Mega64 did a spoiler cast on Ava 3, and that kind of made me like the Rebuild a little bit more. Like, they talk about how, like, Lilith is, like, when they stab Lilith with the Spear of Longinus, it's either, they pronounce it Longinus, but the shows keep pronouncing it Longinus, so I'm just going to call it Longinus, okay? But they have so the spear like stab like the Longinus stabbed Lilith, and that kind of halted the evolution of humanity. And I like that. I like that it's such a obvious like difference between like that and Adam. And there's like a difference between Adam and Lilith, and I like that the humans have Lilith, and Adam is somewhere else, and Adam is more in line with like what angels are and all that. I like that idea a lot. So I can't like necessarily shit on that. So I like that idea that they had Lilith there, and Lilith plays a bigger role in 3 as well. So I really liked 1. It was overall a solid film that I think served a lot of, that served on many levels, that was enjoyable. Like, it had a baseline story for newcomers to come into and to kind of get exposed to Evangelion. And that's the other thing, when people like are saying like, oh, watch the show before the movies. I think if you watch the movies, you're gonna want to watch the shows, because the movies are just so good. You're like, man, I want to see the show. I want to see like what made this, And that's what I felt when I first watched Rebuild 1. I was like, man, I love that movie. I want to see the show. And then like I looked on Amazon, it was like $500. So they put it on Netflix. I was sold at that point. But yeah, I think watching Rebuild first is going to be just as good, because it's going to want you to watch the show, and then you're going to want to watch the Rebuilds again after that. So I think it's better to watch the Rebuilds first, because I think you get more of an idea. Do you want to see the show? Because the show is 26 episodes long, and it's like, yeah, you can watch that, and it's fine. But at the same time, like, I feel like that's just going to whittle away at someone's patience, and they might just lose interest. While the movies are a little more concise in terms of length, and you're gonna definitely know if you like the show or not. Because I like the movies, and I didn't watch the show, and I was able to understand it. I understand like kind of the baseline story of it. When I watched Eva 3 for the first time, it was like I was totally in love with that. But we'll move on to Eva 2. Eva 2, I think I was very harsh in, especially the stream I did a few weeks ago. I think I was being a little unfair to it. So, because at that point I saw the first half of that movie, and the first half kind of crammed a lot of stuff in it. It crammed a lot of stuff with Gendo and Shinji. It crammed stuff with Asuka, Rei. It like crammed all this stuff in, and it just didn't feel like, and Mari as well, and nothing felt like it had a lot of development. It just kind of just shoved them in and just said, fuck it. The last half of Eva 2 was so much better than the first half. That started to get more interesting, and it got more climactic. I mean, obviously by that point, the story should be getting more climactic as it goes. But I really liked the last half of that movie way more than the first half. It's worth sitting through the beginning and end. But I like the stuff with Asuka, like, piloting that test Eva that got infected with the angel, and she got kind of fucked up. Shinji, it replayed that scene from the show, but it was just different. Instead of it being the 5th pilot, it was Asuka, the one that he had to kill, or attempted to kill, whatever you want to look at it. I like that a lot, in the sense of like you get more of a weight with Asuka and Shinji, because like they're kind of co-pilots, and they want to get to know each other, they want to work together, and Shinji's forced to kill her. I also like the music that played during it. It was like this very like, I don't know if it was necessarily happy, but it wasn't sad either. It was this weird like high pitched, like not high pitched, but it was very like, I guess it was like somewhat upbeat music that was playing, and it was very like like disturbing. And that scene, when I watched it the first time before the show, it kind of like disturbed the fuck out of me, because I was just like because you're listening to this like music, you're seeing this like brutal like strangling and like ripping apart the Ava. You start hearing like Shinji screams, and like the people in the bridge, like, oh my god, like they're like cringing, they're like not being able to bear what's going on, and Akari's just like this the whole time, just like, yeah. It was really disturbing when I watched it the first time, because it was like a lot of shit was going on. And that's really what I loved about Ava 2. When I first saw that movie, it was like, holy shit, this is really fucked up. I think that, and then now when I saw it this time, I was kind of thinking this scene and the show scene, and I kind of go between the two, I've noticed. Because at first I was like, yeah, the show I don't think is as intense as it was in the movie. But then when I watched the movie, I felt like that the show was a little more intense. Because I think what kind of takes it away a little bit is that they kind of try to block Shinji's vision of what's going on. And I think the idea of that is that, oh, the pilot it's a dummy pilot, like the pilot doesn't really need to see what's going on, whatever. It's a whatever kind of decision they made. The thing I do like, though, is that it locks Shinji's hands in the gears, so like he's feeling the motions that the Ava is doing, and he can't like get out. Like he's forced to feel what the Ava is doing. I do like that. That is kind of like insane. I think maybe the idea was to like kind of desensitize Shinji to a point. Like he's doing this and not seeing. I don't know. The thing with the non-vision is a whatever choice. But I do think that the screams and the idea that his hands are locked there were a little bit more disturbing, and just seeing that whole scene plays out in the show. I don't think they lock his hands in, because I think he's like holding his he's holding his head in his hands and doing all kinds of shit, like whatever. I don't know if it was that. The scene where he's threatening Nerve. I think in the show it's like Nerve, or like Nerve or whatever. I can't fucking remember it anymore. But in the movies, in the Rebuild movies, was Nerve. It's very obvious that these were dubbed by different people. But in the show, like he was like in the area where they have like the Avas in the cockpit or whatever. Like they have this in that room, and he's just like kind of staring into the bridge. He's like, I'm gonna blow you guys up, you know what the fuck, man. In the Rebuilds, they have him like on top of the pyramid, just like kind of smashing down. Now you can say that's a little bit more like of an edgy kind of scene in the movies, and I don't know, I'm like 50-50 on it. Like, part of me is like, yeah, that is kind of over the top and kind of like not as intense as it being like directly into the bridge. But at the same time, I think him being on top of there is just fine too. Like I like that even you see the Ava stepping down on the headquarters. Then when they knock out Shinji, like the angel also falls down. Like it kind of makes the Ava and Shinji feel like they're one and the same. Like the Ava like feels the same way that Shinji feels, and I think the show tries to show that too, because when they try to reload the dummy plug again in the show, it kept refusing it, and I think it was the same way in the Rebuild films. And I think in the Rebuild films, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 that they stated that Shinji's mom is inside Unit 1, and that kind of gives it more of an idea, like that she's rejecting the dummy plug because like she wants her son to pilot the Ava, I guess you look at it like that. But I do like that it has that kind of 1-to-1 kind of similarity. The one thing I do like a little bit more in the movie is when Shinji wants to pilot Unit 1 again. I like that scene a little bit more. As I said, I want to watch the show again because I'm already forgetting some of the stuff from the show. But I like that kind of confrontation between the father and the son again. They're like, look, I want to pilot Unit 1 again. He lets him pilot Unit 1 again. And this leads to something that's completely different from the show. The show doesn't really do this, but in the movie, so you have that scene where Rei sacrifices herself to save Shinji or whatever. Shinji wants to save Rei, so like instead of like whatever, he is like just saying fuck everything. I'm gonna save her. I'm gonna finally do what I want to fucking do. And even Misato like is telling him like, yeah, fuck what we want. Do what you want to do, Shinji. Fuck that. Do what you want. And I think this kind of comes to a head because like the whole show and the whole movie, for at least the beginning of it, it's been nothing but like Shinji like reluctantly doing stuff that he's told. And as I said, like I think the movie is going in a different pace with this. They're taking Shinji to a different direction because this is a different Shinji. He's a little cocky. He gets a little bit more invested or involved with the Evas, and I think eventually he just wants to be a pilot. Like he wants to pilot the Eva because I think he wants to understand a little bit more. But I also think he wants to harness the power to. Like, by the second movie, I think at that point he starts to understand that I can harness this power to do what I want to do with it. So he wants to save Rei, and that's kind of what he does with that power. And, unknowns to him, he kind of creates the third impact. And, with Misato cheering him on, telling him to fuck everything, do what you want to, for once in your life, do what you want. And I think, too, kind of has that kind of theme of, do what you want, just do it. Fuck the risks that are involved and just fucking do it. And I think that's even, the subtitles, like in the first one, it's like, I think we are not alone, which I think is also kind of a play, like there's angels coming down, whatever. The second movie, I think is like, you cannot advance. And it's like, you cannot advance is like a very oppressive term. Like, it's like saying you cannot advance. And I think that's kind of the idea. Like, people don't want the third impact. So they're like, you cannot do this. It's going to cause the third impact. Don't do it. And Shinji's like, fuck that. I'm going to advance this. I'm going to go ahead and save Rei. Fuck everything else. And he's doing it for what he wants. Which leads into the third movie, which is You Cannot Redo. And that is dealing with the consequence of that action. And I think that's really what the third movie is about. The second movie is just about like, you have these Evas. You have to like you have to pilot them, you have to own what you're doing, and you have to do it. You have to do it. You have to do what you have to do, and do what you want to do. Like, it kind of continues somewhat of the theme of the first movie, because Misato also tells Shinji in Rebuild 1, look, you have to do what you want to do. Like, yeah, you did great in the fucking Eva, but do you want to do that? Do what makes you happy. And Eva always had this theme. Because that's the one thing that they talked about in the show as well, is that do what you want. When you do something that makes you happy and you just, do it, that's how you should live your life. Don't do stuff because you're told to. Don't do stuff because you have to. That's something that everyone has to face in their life. They either have to do what they're told or they should just not do what they're told, do what makes them happy and see where that takes them. And the Rebuild films kind of focus on that. And I think it kind of goes into the cynical approach. That's like, and at the end of the second film, Shinji does something that he wants. He wants to get Rei out of there. And that leads to the issues in Eva 3 that is just, that's even worse. Like it has all these consequences. So overall, I think the second film is good in the sense that you stick through till the end. The last half is really the part where that movie gets better. The first half is good. It has. I like the idea that they have like a plant with sea life, and they're like, oh, this is like where we're purifying the water, and at some point we hope to repopulate the oceans with this. Hopefully, whatever. I like that idea. I like that idea that they actually take him to this place to see the wildlife. I do like that. I like the stuff with Gendo Ikari in that season as well. There's a lot of stuff I liked in that season. It's just, I feel like that it tried to focus on too many pilots, because they had Mary and Asuka, Rei, and Shinji, and they kept going through all of them. And it's like, you kind of have to whittle it down to at least a good number. I just didn't think that I think Mari and Asuka kind of got very small amount of development in 2. And when I watched 2 again, when you get to that scene where Shinji's forced to kill Asuka, like, I mean, I liked Asuka as a character to begin with, so I was kind of invested in that character, and that's why that scene was a little bit more fucked up. But I think if we saw more of Asuka, it would be interesting. It would have a bigger impact because, you know, they get to the part in the show where Shinji and Rei team up to take down this angel, and Asuka was kind of left there to be useless. And they kind of shoehorn in this idea that, like, oh, I'm useless, I can't do anything. And that doesn't really go anywhere. Like, I feel like they tried to have it go somewhere when the angel corrupts the Eva, but I just don't think they connect it well enough. Like, there's no scene where she's like, okay, I'm gonna pilot the Eva, but, you know, I think I'm fucking useless, you know, I'm just doing what I'm told. Like there's parts in the show that's like that, where she's like, kind of like, I'm useless, I'm just a fucking dummy, whatever, and I think if they had that in the movie more often, like they had scenes like that, it would have made that scene where the angel takes over that Eva have a little bit more of an impact to it. But other than that, it's a whatever scene. It works, I guess. But I just don't think Asuka is as well developed as it is in the show. And that's not to say like there is always gonna be some level of underdevelopment compared to a show, because the show has like all these episodes to kind of focus on it, while a movie has like an hour and 15-minute runtime at most. So, I mean, I'm not saying that they need to go super in-depth with Asuka, but, I mean, there were some things that, you know, I just wish were actual scenes in it. Like, okay, have her in the cockpit of that new Eva, and she's, like, starting to doubt herself, and maybe she's having a hard time, like, starting it up, and then the angel comes in and fucks everything up. They kind of had a scene like that a little bit, but it was very, like that, almost. So, I can't say necessarily it was done well enough. But let's move on to the third movie, which is still my favorite movie. I like that the most. Even on my second viewing, I liked it the first time I watched it, and I loved it the second time. I just like how different it is from the show. Like, because like the first two movies, I kind of felt like they kind of wrote them in a little corner. It's like, okay guys, we gotta kind of keep it similar to the show. We could change some things, but not everything. And a little bit of the end of 2, they kind of said fuck that too with creating the third impact. But you know, in 3 it was just like, fuck it, let's go completely different. 14 years into the future, Shinji's like in a fucking coffin in space with the Eva, and he's just like floating around. Asuka has an eye patch. She's still around. She goes in there to save Shinji or whatever. They use Unit 1 as an engine for the spacecraft or whatever. You have Will, whatever, and Wonder Bar, whatever. You have these two like other competing factors. It's the dynamic has changed altogether. Misato's like taken like the Gendo role in this particular organization. And I love the contrast of the environments between where Misato and they are. Like, they're in this, like, nice, like, high-tech spaceship almost. While, like, you know, Gendo is this run-down nerve headquarters that's just, like, dilapidated and is, like, falling apart. And it's so, like... Because I wonder if that's more of like a visual of like the old versus the new, like Misato being like, you know, more harsh and not so like ditzy or whatever as she was in the earlier movies. I mean, she's not like a ditz, but like she was like very like she was at least like kind of happy, I guess. While here she's like serious. She's like, we gotta fucking deal with this. You know, they have these inexperienced pilots as well. I mean, it just feels like it's like a new take of Nerve almost there with that. And then you have like the old Nerve with Gendo, and it's like this versus kind of thing. Like you have, you know, the old Gendo, like you have like, but he's a little more cold, but he's still kind of the same Gendo to a point. And he's just still trying to do what he needs to get done. He's still in the same old HQ. It's like it's very traditional for him. Like the motive for what he's doing in the movies hasn't completely changed from what he was from the show. So it's like this old kind of like character and old motives that are there, while in, well, you know, with Misato, it's completely different. She wants to destroy the Evas. She wants to kill Gendo probably. It's a completely, it flips everything on its head. And I like that. I like that it just drops you in, and it's like, there you go. Your third impact happened. Shinji was in space. Asuka had to save him. Asuka still looks like she's 14. What the fuck is up with that? Whatever. And I like that it gives you all these questions because it leaves you relating to Shinji more. And that was something that was a little different with these Rebuild films. You didn't really feel any immersion or relatability with Shinji because he was doing something completely different from the show. While in the show, you kind of felt the same beat as Shinji. You kind of felt like you were seeing stuff through his perspective. When he wanted to leave Nervi, he didn't want to pilot Ava. It was around the same time. You were like, this is getting fucked up. I want to take a break, pretty much. When it gets heavy, and you start thinking to yourself, I want to take a break. Shinji wants to leave, and he doesn't want to pilot an Ava. Here, it's 14 years. Everyone's upset at Shinji, and you and Shinji are both like, what the fuck? Why are we angry at each other? Because the thing that's important to remember is that Shinji did not say, you know what? I'm gonna start the third impact, baby. Let's see what the third impact does. Hell yeah! He didn't do it just to do it. He did it. He did what he wanted because he wanted to save Rei, and Misato was kind of encouraging that. And I think a lot of people kind of forget that I think the reason why Misato is a bitch to Shinji and treat him like shit is that I think she sees a lot of her guilt in him. Because she was telling me, yeah, Shinji, fucking do it. Yeah, man. And then when you see what happens, it's she has to kind of confront her own guilt and consequence. Like that, and that's what I mean. The third movie covers all of these consequences to what they have done in the second movie. Misato has to come to terms that, yeah, I fucking started this, and she already had guilt about the second impact with her father. She felt guilty about that, and she was upset about that, and she's back at that again where she feels like, look, I might have done this again, and she feels guilty for this, and she also kind of blames herself, but she's taking it out on Shinji because he was the one piloting it. And I think it's also very easy to blame Shinji because he was in the fucking cockpit. The other thing is that when you look at the other pilots, they were just upset at Shinji because they don't know anything. They just knew that Shinji fucking started the third impact, this fucking asshole. And, and I think, Retsuko, to a degree, is a little bit more, she's not, upset with Shinji because I think she kind of knew, the whole circumstance of what was going on. She understood, probably understood, Shinji wanted to save Rei. She was like, you shouldn't do this. But then Misato was like, yeah, do it, man. So she was probably like, yeah, this sucks, and, I'm kind of with Misato on this, but at the same time, I can't be too mad with him. So she felt neutral in that, but she was just kind of fucking Retsuko. She focuses on her job, dude. But then they bring up the curse of the Avas, and I like this idea. Now, in that same video I mentioned earlier, but from Mega 64, that spoiler cast, I like the idea that Anno just threw that in just to kind of have a little commentary about anime culture, pretty much. Just the fan base. It's these fucking girls, she's gonna be 14 forever. So I do like that it has this kind of passive aggressive note to it, and I think I like the idea that these Avas have some kind of curse that kind of locks the pilots into age 14. And I'm wondering to myself about that, thinking, maybe what the idea is that the Avas, would kind of merge with the pilot, and that's why they're locked at age 14. Because I think in the Rebuild films and the show, they kind of talk about how only 14-year-olds can pilot an Ava. Adults cannot at all pilot Avas, and I'm just wondering. Maybe the idea is that, the reason why Avas kind of curse these 14-year-olds to stay that way is because they want them to be like that forever, so they could pilot them forever, and over time they would kind of build an addiction to being an Ava pilot. And I think that's kind of what happens, because Asuka at first is like, yeah, it's the curse of the Avas. We're stuck this way. She's like just a little upset. Like, it sounds like she just is not too thrilled to being in an Ava. But then when she's in an Ava, like that scene by the end where she has to sacrifice the Ava, she's like, "Oh, please forgive me, Unit 2 or whatever," and she kind of like self-destructs the Ava while like she leaves. And it's like I feel like if you don't like the Ava, like if you're just like, fuck this Ava, I just don't think you would be like, oh, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Like, I don't think you're gonna care about the forgiveness of a thing you don't like. So I think there is some point where maybe the pilots get more and more conditioned to want to be in there, and you see that with Shinji and Mari, because Mari like loves being in there. Like, there's all these like junk food wrappers in her cockpit. She just loves being in that. And I think eventually it's like you want to be immersed within the Ava and you start to become one. While I think like Asuka's a little bit more self-aware of that, I think that there are times where she kind of falls victim to that. And it's to the point where also like with Shinji, they had to put like a fucking choker on him to make sure that he does not pilot an Ava. And I feel like you have this character that just did not want to pilot an Ava at all, and they had to put a choker on him to be like, no, if you go in this fucking Ava, you're gonna fucking die. And it's like, if he didn't want to pilot it, I'm sure you didn't need the choker because whatever. And you could argue that it might be an insurance policy in case like Gendo forced him to pilot an Ava or whatever. But I also feel like that there is this fear that maybe Shinji is gonna want to pilot an Ava at some point. Like, maybe he's gonna be like, I belong in there. I feel like I need to be in that Ava, And I think there was even a line in the show that was like, Shinji said like, "Oh, why does it feel right being in here?" or something. I think he says something like that, and so that might play into more of that addiction to being inside an Ava. And I think 3 kind of shows like there is a curse and a negative consequence of being in an Ava. And as I said, like 3 just seems like a consequence film. Like it just shows like all these consequences of what these characters did. Like, oh yeah, you fucking did the third impact. Well, guess what? You ended all life, buddy. Oh yeah, everyone hates you too, Shinji. You fucking asshole. Masato, you fucking allowed this to happen. Fuck you. Like, there's all these like this punishment of what they did in the second movie, and it goes with the title. You cannot redo. Like, and it also goes into what like Kaoru tells him. Like, oh yeah, we can redo it, Shinji. We can redo everything. We could go back and fix everything. You may not have to pilot an Ava ever again. Wouldn't that be great? And it kind of gives you this idea, like, can you redo? And I think by the end, I feel like with the 4th movie, it's either gonna like just piss people off and give a happy ending, which could happen, or it's gonna just not give any ending. I kind of have a feeling like I wouldn't mind for this kind of show or this kind of movie have a happy ending. Everyone gets what they want out of it. But I think it would be interesting to see if it's like such a neutral ending. Like it ends, like it's finite and infinitive and all that shit, but it just feels like, did it really end? Like, what's really going on, Like, I feel like that would be an interesting way to end the Rebuild films. Because, like, they talk about, oh, you could go back, you could redo things. And I think in the 3rd movie, they also tried to make a point of, you cannot do that. Like, yeah, the idea you can. I think in some way they were using that kind of ideology to Shinji to keep him motivated to pilot the 13 Ava unit. And then he ends up piloting it, and that's another moment where Shinji starts saying, fuck everything, I'm gonna do what the fuck I want. Because, like, Kaoru's, like, suspicious about the fucking spears. It's like, wait, this isn't right. There's something off about these spears. Because there's no cadence. I think it was, like, the spear of cadence or whatever. And it's 2 Longinuses. And it's like, oh, fuck, it's a trap, and you find out that it kind of was a trap at some point by the end, and it's interesting to see where that happens. The other thing that's interesting is that Gendo starts to turn off the Seele. And I was always curious about this because in the show, they showed who Seele was. You saw them, their human form, pretty much. Up until the end, you only saw the monoliths, and that was to the point where, like, they were going after Gendo for betraying them. Here, it seemed that Gendo was going along with them. Like, oh yeah, man, we're gonna do what you want, buddy. And then he just kind of turns them off, and ends with, like, Seele being happy. And to a point, I think the idea is that Gendo had a plan to make Seele happy and do what he wanted to do. Because I think Gendo says that he's going to amend the Dead Sea Scrolls, which we haven't seen either. So I'm very curious to see what the next film is going to be, because this film left in such a weird, like, kind of point. It's like, what's Gendo planning? What's he going to do with these Dead Sea Scrolls? Why were there two Longinuses? What is going to happen? They get like Shinji out of the plug, and Shinji's kind of like fucked up because who witnessed Kaoru dying pretty much. The other thing I remember hearing from that Mega 64 video is that I think people think that Asuka is an angel, which I think might be the case, but they were saying that, like, oh, she died in 2, which I don't think that's the case either, because in 2, I'm pretty sure they said, like, well, we salvage what we can. We can see what we can make out of Asuka to see if she's gonna pull through or whatever. It just sounded like they didn't say anything that was like, yeah, she's fucking dead. She's a corpse. Like, it sounded like, yeah, we there's stuff there that we could salvage, see what happens. Because I think they also mentioned that she's contaminated with the angel, which is why they contaminated everything and quarantined her pretty much. And then I guess somewhere between the 14 years, they're like, yeah, fucking, she's good, release her, whatever. The other thing that was also weird is that she kind of changed the physiology of the Eva. Like, the Eva completely changed. And, I wonder, because, like, Mari was able to, like, kind of go to Berserk mode through a code that she instituted. I'm not completely sure if she was able to kind of still talk in it. Like, I don't remember. I think she was able to talk, because I was thinking maybe, like, Asuka able to talk during going beast mode was something that was, something an angel would do or whatever, but I don't think that's the case. But whatever, I'm interested to see what, where this is, because I think the other thing that's kind of telling that Asuka might be an angel is that she was like, oh, we're gonna go see the Lilium, or whatever. We're gonna go to them, and it's like, no one really talks like that. No human talks like that about other humans, pretty much. I also liked the scene where Shinji was talking to that old guy, the old man, after he was playing that game of shogi. I like the scene where, like, he didn't like that Gendo was not gonna explain to Shinji the motives. And I feel like even if Gendo did, I think Gendo kind of had a point of not telling him, because I think if Gendo told him, I think that would have caused Shinji to not pilot. But whatever. The old guy's like, fuck, I'll take it upon myself to tell him about his mom and what happened. And it kind of is somewhat similar to what happened in the show, where, like, she kind of vanishes in an experiment that has gone wrong. And like, in the show, they played off as like, well, you were too young to remember. In the Rebuild movies, they just tell them straight up, we wiped your memory of this. But I like that scene because it's a very, like, intense scene where Shinji starts to understand, like, there is a lot of fucked up stuff that's going on with this that he initially thought. Because he probably just thought that it was, like, some like, simple conspiracy that might just be something that just affects, whatever. And then here it's like, yeah, it affected your life from the start. This was a thing that happened years ago, and it's just getting worse. And with this, I feel like it's kind of putting into more of a curse on him. Like, Misato, I think in the show, I'm not completely sure if she mentions it here. She mentions that the whole thing with her was a curse, like the curse of the Evas. She mentions, or the curse of the angels or something. She mentions some curse in the show. This curse of revenge and whatever, and that kind of, like, comes back with Shinji having this curse of being Gendo's son. And this was also something that Shinji and Misato kind of bonded on almost, because they both had issues with their dad. but here I kind of feel like that's slowly shifting because I think at some point to a point I feel more in the movies than in the show. I feel like Gendo kind of still has some fatherly love towards Shinji. I just think that he also is a man of work. Like he wants to just do what he needs to do. Like yeah, Shinji's my son. You know, I love him and all, but you know, this is gonna be better for everyone. So you know, whatever. Because there's just stuff that he plans that benefits Shinji to a degree. Like you know, they planned out that, okay, Kaoru's gonna take the collar, he's gonna die, we're gonna have to sacrifice him and keep Shinji. That was planned. They planned to save Shinji from that. Now, all this is, like, obviously, well, he needs a pilot 13, Theo, but, like, that's the case, but, like, you know, why Shinji in particular? Like, his sync rate was 0. You would think that like Gendo would be like, yeah, he would think that he would have at least an idea that his sync rate would be 0 or something, and he'd be like, yeah, maybe I should find someone else or something. But I guess he also planned Shinji to make a friend with Kaoru, I guess as well. I mean, there's just stuff that I think is planned to further his plans and also to kind of you know, get Shinji out of the shit that he's in. Because, like, did it really benefit to keep, like, I mean, because, like, it just seems that he leaves it up to chance that Shinji's a free man, pretty much. Like, I feel like after the events of 2, or, 3, excuse me, that it might have benefited to kill Shinji, because Shinji could be another force that could be a thorn in his side as well. Because I feel like Shinji's this, like, kind of pilot character now that can just say whatever, fuck it, you know, and that could also be where the 4th movie's gonna be, where Shinji's gonna be at a point where it's like, you know, he kind of, I feel like he's gonna pilot Unit 1 again in the 4th movie. He's gonna be able to talk to his mom or some shit like that, and or at least get something and understand that, like, look, she loves Gendo, she loves my dad, and I love Misato and this group, but these people hate each other. And they both want me to side with them. You know what? Fuck both of you guys. You guys don't know what the fuck you want. You know, I'm gonna do something that is just gonna make, you know, that's just gonna make no one happy, and it's gonna be whatever. You know, I have a feeling everything's gonna come to a head, and Shinji's is gonna say, fuck this, and it's either gonna lead to another rebuild of what's going on, or it's gonna lead to just lead to, like, nothingness or something. I feel like it's gonna end where either both people are gonna be happy, like they're both gonna be happy with what they are, and they're never gonna want to fight again, or something. Because I just feel like Shinji's gonna slowly get fed up because Misato's team was kind of treating him like shit before. He kind of had no incentive to stay on board that ship when Rei came to save him. Like, they kept telling him, don't go with them, they're gonna fuck you up, don't do it, don't fucking do it, stay here, stay the fuck here. And he had no incentive to stay there, because he's like, you guys fucking locked me up, you put a bomb on my neck, he said, you guys gave me, like, fucking dirty looks. Fuck you guys, I'm gonna go with fucking Rei. I have no reason to believe that she's gonna fuck me up, you know, whatever. So he goes with her. He then realizes that, alright, hi son, you're gonna pilot that fucking Eva. Bye, bitch. He leaves. He sees Rei, and Rei's like, I'm not the fucking Rei, bitch. And he's like, god damn it, she's a fucking dummy the whole time. And Kaoru fucking dies. So there's, like, nothing there that made him happy either. Like both sides kind of used him. And I feel like the last movie is just gonna be Shinji just saying, fuck this, fuck you guys, I'm gonna make a world where I'm happy. This is gonna be how it's gonna go down, and he's gonna make it happen. I think that's what is gonna happen in the last movie, because it just seems that's the direction it's going. Because you look at 1, pilot the Ava. I don't want to pilot the Ava, man. I just want to go home. And then he starts piloting the Ava. Oh, dummy plug, kill Asuka. Oh fuck, you know, I don't want to be a pilot. I have to be a pilot. No, you know what? I'm gonna save Rei. Hey man, you start the third impact. Fuck that, I'm gonna do it. I want to save Ray. Yeah, Shinji, do what you want. Yeah, I fucked up the world, and it just kind of goes through this like course of like Shinji like not wanting to do something, wants to do something. He then gets conflicting into, and I think that scene where he kind of like has enough with Ray. I think at that point he had enough with her being a dummy. He's like kind of like walking like this. A crazy piano's playing, and you start hearing pilot the Ava. Don't get into the Ava. Pilot the Ava. Don't pilot the Ava. Like he starts hearing all these like conflicting messages, and I think that sums up what is gonna happen so well. Like he's so conflicted because, and that scene was intense. That's another scene I loved. I loved how overbearing it is and of an overload it is. It's like fly the Ava, don't fly the Ava, do the Ava, don't do the Ava. Oh, this is all your fault. The curse of the Ava. Oh man, and it's just so much and I think that it's gonna just end with Shinji just saying fuck this and I think it's gonna play with that expectation where you're gonna want Shinji to do something, and Shinji's gonna not want what you want. And I think that's gonna be everything that's gonna where it's gonna end. I think it's gonna end where Shinji just goes beyond expectation on both sides and with the viewer, and it's just gonna have such a. I feel like the ending is gonna piss people off because it's gonna be something that is gonna go against what their expectation is, and I can't wait to see where it's gonna be because I just feel like it's building up to that. You have this clear thread of what Shinji's character is becoming, and I think in the last movie it's just gonna come to a head and it's gonna be like fuck this, so. I overall loved those Rebuild films. I do recommend watching them. Be it the first time, watch that for the first time you want to watch an Eva film, I guess. Watch the show, watch these again as well, whatever. I enjoyed them the second time I watched them. Now that I've seen all three of them, I think these are good. I think the movies are really good. I think a lot of people, didn't like them either because they couldn't get the show accessible, and this was like the best we got for that. But now that we have it on Netflix, people are like starting to warm up to the show again. But then I think a lot of people just did not like how drastic the third movie is. Like it took 14 years into the future. But I think all of that serves the themes of it, because I think if they didn't do this time jump, the impact of what Shinji's going through wouldn't be so severe. Because you're just as confused as Shinji is, and I think it makes it more impactful. And I think the third movie, in a way, kind of gets you back feeling for what Shinji's going through. Because the other two movies, you could kind of pick a character almost and say, yeah, I kind of agree with them. Here, it's like you don't know who to trust. You don't know who, and it's kind of how I felt with the show. Like you don't know necessarily if Seele is the true bad guy or if Gendo is. And by the end, you kind of realize that they both were kind of bad guys, and maybe Gendo was like the not so bad in comparison because he wanted to kind of fix the imperfections of humanity by making them all one, while Seele just wanted to wipe the earth and continue with the evolution. Here, it just you don't know because Misato, her team wants to destroy the Avas and. You don't know necessarily why she wants to do that. And here you have Gendo and Kaoru telling him, like, oh, we can restart things, we can do things for the better. This is the whole point of what we're doing. And you just don't know who to trust. And I feel like that time jump, the whole thing that we see in the third movie is very obvious. So I'm excited to see what the final movie is. I like the three movies. I liked them all. The second movie, my tone has changed on it because I finished it, so I like that movie a little bit more than I did when I saw only half of it for that stream. But I like the whole three movies. They're good. They're good movies. I think the rebuilds are good for what they're accomplishing and what they're aiming for because they're movies. They are gonna not be as intricate as the show. So I went in, okay, it's gonna be a movie, and I like that. I think these movies are very interesting and they're still good. And in terms of the dub, It's just like the Netflix Evangelion dub. I'm not gonna talk about how the translations are because I don't know how the translations compare with the rebuilds, but the performance wise, Shinji in the beginning of the show, in the beginning of the movie, it feels awkward and it's like I don't know if this fits the character. I don't know, and then by like the end of the first movie and the second movie and the third movie, like once you get to the second movie and onward, the voice actor kind of grew into the role. It's just like the show, like the voice actor of Shinji in the show. Like the first episode is like what the fuck, and then like as you continue to watch it, the dub gets better and better in terms of performance. So it's the same thing with the rebuilds. I don't know why that is, but the dub is good. The dub is good. I'll just leave it at that. It's good. I like Masada's dub. The dub is pretty solid in rebuild overall. Kaji, maybe it's a little spotty with him, but you know it's fine over the overall. I mean, the dub that they got for the Netflix Evangelion is better, but it's good for what it is. It's serviceable, dude. But overall, the rebuilds are still good movies. I still think they're solid films that you should check out. So if you haven't seen any of these rebuild films, I don't know why you're watching this whole video, but if you know a friend, if they haven't seen the rebuild films, I recommend them. I think it's a very good. Those are very good movies. They get you accumulated. They get you kind of to understand what Ava's about in a good way. It doesn't feel rushed. It feels fine. I think if you like the rebuilds, you're gonna like the show. If you don't like the rebuilds, I don't know if they would necessarily even like the show because, you know, if they don't like a movie of Ava, I don't know if they're gonna like 26 episodes of the show. I don't know about that, man, but I think the rebuilds are good movies. I think they're good for newcomers as well. You may not appreciate the idea or the theories of these being kind of like a rebuild from the end of Ava or whatever. But I don't think you need to know that to enjoy them or to understand these movies. These movies stand on their own very well. As movies, I mean, they all like stand together, but you don't need to watch the show to understand the movies. You might appreciate some small, subtle things in the movies, but you know, again, I watched the movies before I watched the show, and I was able to understand the show. Now that I watch the show, it's like I can kind of appreciate more of the stuff with the show. Like, and that's what I like about Evangelion as well. Last thing I'll say about Eva in general is that it's a show that to me seems like you could watch it continuously and always have a new appreciation for it. So there you go. So thanks for watching this video about my thoughts on the Rebuild movies and a little bit of my theories of it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. And feel free to share your own theories of the Rebuild films. What do you think the last movie is gonna be? I don't know. The only thing I know is that Retsuko has a plug suit. That's all I know. But I didn't see anything. So there you go. But that's my opinion of that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to support me, however you want, it's fine with me. Watch the video, whatever. Do what you want. You guys are smart. You guys know what you're doing. See you guys in the next one.